Luis Jimenez with Fino Boxing here with Steven Espinosa. Great card. Sebastian Fedora putting his title on the line against Brian Mendoza. What are your thoughts on this matchup coming up in a few days?
Well, look, there's a great history at StubHub at Dignity Health Sports Park, and it's a history of some great fights and memorable fights. But more than anything, I think there's an expectation among the fighters and among the fans about the kinds of fights that you get there. And for me personally, as much as all that history and all that expectation, I just love the concept of outdoor fights. Like it's a great venue. It's a great venue to see a fight because it's built for tennis. It's built for that small scale, and we've set up a card that is populated with action fighters. Top to bottom. When we look at even off TV, from Areola to Gabriel Maestre to Devin Alexander, Gabriela Fundora. We've got a great the Corona Lopez fight is probably one of the best match fights on the card, and that's all before we get to the main event. But then when you look at the televised card, we've seen Pedro Campa, we've seen Brandon Lee. You know what kind of fighter Zoe are. We know what kind of fighter Brian Mendoza is. Like most of these guys, they only have one way. I think that the two guys in our opening fight, in Nunez and Castro, that is, that will be an introduction for most fights. But I think what you'll see in that evening is it really is action fight from top to bottom.
Yeah, it's definitely a stat card. There's no better way to bring in, Easter Sunday. When you mention, the whole card, it's every single matchup looks like it's 50-50 on paper, and you say it's the war grounds. There's always great fights at Dignity Sports Park. So many reasons why to tune in to Showtime Saturday night. Obviously, fight fans are eager for April 22nd to get here. Tank against Ryan Garcia is the talk of the town, not only within boxing fans, but just across the board. How eager and excited are you for April 22nd to get here, and obviously, for have fight fans get those pay-per-views that
Look, it's one of the highlights of the calendar, and I think it's there's something extra special. And look, we've had some big Wilder fights, we have some big Canelo fights, we've obviously had the big Mayweather fights, bigger than anything else. But there's also a sense of I think part of the excitement is this is a new matchup. These are younger guys. Now Tank's been headlining pay-per-views for a while, but this is fresh blood at the top of the division. This is putting nothing against the guys that are established. I get as excited to see a Canelo fight as anybody else. But by the same token, having this kind of matchup with young guys in the division, it's just it's fresh and new. It's what boxing fans really like about the sport, is discovering new guys, seeing them rise to the top, and then seeing how far can they go. And that's the real question: is how far can Tank go? How far can Ryan go?
Do you think this is a matchup, as far as whoever wins, obviously Ryan or Tank, but it could open up the floodgates to see Jaime Munguia fight on Showtime, to see him take on, perhaps a Charlo, to see other matchups that fight fans want to see?
Yeah, I think, look, each fight is its own negotiation, so, it's not always the same template. It's not like we could say, hey, let's do what Ryan, what Tank and Ryan did. And what we did with the zone, and just duplicate that. But by the same token, sure, it does set a precedent. It is possible. We have some foundation for how to work together. But I think, more than anything, I think it's the time that we're in. And what I mean by that is, we've had a lot of new people come into the sport the last few years, and it is from a brand and strategic perspective. You don't come into the sport, this is just my opinion, I don't know their strategies, but from what I've observed, you don't come into the sport looking to share everything with anybody else. You're trying to make a name for yourself in the sport, and it's sort of like, hey, I'm putting my brand out, I don't want to water it down by working with anybody else. I need as much as possible on my platform, because I'm trying to build an audience. Now, we've been here for almost 40 years, and we've shown that we can and will work with other people, whether it's different promoters, whether it's working with HBO way back in 2002 on Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis, or working with the UFC, or working with HBO again on Mayweather Pacquiao, and countless other examples in between. So we're comfortable doing it, as long as the business makes sense. And hopefully this will show some of the newer platforms that, it's not the end of the world to sort of show some flexibility once in a while.
Yeah, we've seen Canelo obviously, start his career with Showtime. He left and came back for the Kellen Plant Undisputed fight. From what it looks like, it was a total success for both parties. Is there a plan, maybe in action, to give David Benavidez that matchup that fight fans want to see, that maybe you could package, a fight against Morel, a fight against Jamal Charlo, or perhaps against Andrade? Has those thoughts crossed your mind of maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. And we made a really aggressive offer, and I think the best financial offer out there before Canelo took the Bivol matchup, and it was a very aggressive offer for either Charlo or Benavidez. And PBC and TGB put an offer out that obviously was backed by us. But money isn't always everything. There's history, there's legacy, there's new weight classes. So that time the money wasn't all that convincing. But it wasn't for lack of trying. It wasn't for lack of aggressiveness on the financial end. So sure, I mean, if there's another opening in the fall, we'll be just as aggressive. But the great thing about it is it's not all dependent on Canelo. Like, these guys have said, every one of them, it'd be great to have a Canelo fight, but we're not going to wait. We're not going to put our careers on hold.
Correct, yeah.
And you see Benavidez fighting Plant. You see Benavidez talking about fighting Morel. You see, Charlo talking about getting into the mix. Andre somewhere fitting in there. So there's plenty of other talent in some really good matchups. If that Canelo fight can't happen immediately.
Lastly, Steven, before you take out to Vegas, I would imagine you're going to see the Gervonta Davis meet workout. There's a lot of rumors about finally getting Crawford Spence. Fan fighters don't want to get too excited, but just can we get an answer directly from the force, obviously directly from the source? What can you give the fight fans as far as an update?
Well, look, I want to be conservative because we've been on the cusp before. We've been right on the doorstep, and it didn't quite work out. So, I don't want to say, hey, look, we're almost done. We're getting closer. There's still some obstacles, a handful, but we're making progress, and there are ongoing discussions every day. So, things are moving, which I think is the most positive thing. I mean, that's not what people want to hear. But I also don't want to, say to people, hey, count on it, start booking your flights. Yeah. We were almost at that point last fall, and it fell a point. So I don't want to, promise anything I can't deliver. So, having said that, I am very optimistic. There are active discussions going on. I'm not sure where the June 17th date comes from, to be completely honest.
It seems kind of close to the type of mega fight.
And it's a little bit of a cart before the horse, in that you don't want to set a date before your deal is done, because then what if it takes a couple weeks longer than you thought? Then you sort of got to pull it back. So the date is something that you sort of wait until you're really literally ready to sign, and then figure it out. So I'm not saying it couldn't be June 17th, because it could if this gets done really quickly, but it is a short runway. And I'd prefer to see it a little bit later in the summer. And I think most boxing fans aren't going to argue about whether it's June or July, as long as they get the fight.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt. As far as Errol Spence, is there a plan B? If he doesn't get that Crawford fight.
I wouldn't even call it a plan B, because look, in terms of great matchups, Spence Thurman is every bit as good as Spence Crawford. Now, one has the added juice of being for the undisputed title, and that's history, that's legacy, that's an opportunity you don't get very often. So I think that's why it's probably a priority. But by the same token, I think the Spence Thurman matchup is every bit as good as Spence Crawford. I mean, I understand there might be some disappointment because it's not the undisputed, but in terms of the fight faction, in terms of the rivalry, in terms of sort of how that fight plays out, I think that's I wouldn't even call that a plan B. I think that's a great alternative if the undisputed fight doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's a great fight in my opinion, but I think fight fans will be disappointed, if it's Errol Spence against Thurman, because obviously when it came out that it was going to happen, either going to be on Fox or Showtime a few months ago, fans, there was some sort of backlash on that.
Yeah, I understand the disappointment, because you're on, again, the doorstep of being able to get an undisputed welterweight titleist, and I think that's why Spence and Crawford are back at the table again, because it is almost unique. It's a rare opportunity, and you don't want to lose it without being able to go to bed at night saying, look, I tried everything humanly possible to get it done.
Definitely. Stephen, well, thank you so much for the time. We can't wait to see you Saturday night, and obviously April 22nd as well.
All right, great.
Thank you.